Welcome once again to all the students. On the previous day, I had talked regarding the regressive alterations of tooth, such as attrition, erosion, abrasion, and effraction of the tooth. Now, today, I'm also going to be talking about certain regressive changes of tooth, but these are certainly different, and these include dead tracts, sclerotic dentin, the primary dentin, the reparative dentin, and the regressive changes within the pulp. These are the things that I'm going to talk about today. Now, first, to start off with, we are going to talk about dead tracts. Now, what are dead tracts? In dried ground sections of normal dentin, the odontoblast processes disintegrate and the empty dentinal tubules are filled with air. I repeat, in dried ground sections of normal dentin, the odontoblast processes disintegrate and as a result of which the empty dentinal tubules are filled with air. These empty dentinal tubules they appear black in transmitted light and white in reflected light. These empty dentinal tubules filled with air they appear under light microscope as black under transmitted light and white under reflected light. Now, how these dead tracts are produced? These dead tracts are produced as a result of any previous regressive alteration of tooth such as attrition, abrasion, erosion, etc., which I have mentioned in my previous class, or as a result of any kind of trauma to the tooth, or as a result of any kind of microbial disease such as the dental caries, or it can be iatrogenic such as during a cavity preparation which might be faulty that can lead to destruction of these odontoblastic processes in a tooth containing vital pulp, thereby leading to formation of these structures which are known as dead tracts. Now, what are the regions of the tooth in which dead tracts are mostly seen to be predominating? In the region of the narrow pulpal horns, there are increased number of dead tracts because this is the region where odontoblastic processes tend to crowd or conglomerate. Because odontoblastic processes tend to crowd or conglomerate in the region of the narrow pulpal horns. In this region, there is an increased number of dead tracts. So, you have got an idea about dead tracts. Now, I am going to continue with sclerotic dentin. Now, what is sclerotic dentin? Sclerotic dentin is a specific zone or area or of hypermineralized dentin which can be visualized under transmitted light in light microscope and appears transparent or white or translucent in appearance. I repeat again for your ease. That is, the sclerotic dentin is an area or zone of hypermineralized dentin which appears white or transparent when a section of dentin is visualized under transmitted light. However, it appears black under reflected light. Now, what is the reason behind the pathogenesis or the formation of this sclerotic dentin? This part is very significant. Now, normally, under any external stimuli such as mechanical, thermal, bacterial, or chemical stimuli, it is observed that sometimes instead of formation of dead tracts or reparative dentin, it might lead to protective changes within the dentin itself. That is, sometimes external stimuli like mechanical, thermal stimuli, etc., can lead to protective changes within the dentin itself rather than formation of structures like dead tracts or reparative dentin. Now, how does this protective changes take place? Now, as a result of this external stimuli, there are formation of collagen fibers and apatite crystals within the tubular lumens of the dentinal tubules. There is formation of collagen fibers and apatite crystals within the dentinal tubules as a result of this external stimuli. And as these collagen fibers and apatite crystals are formed within the dentinal tubules, the tubule lumen gradually begins to obliterate and it becomes filled with mineral crystals. As these collagen fibers and apatite crystals accumulate within the dentinal tubules, the tubule lumen gradually begins to be obliterated and becomes filled with mineral crystals. As the tubule lumen gets obliterated and it gets filled with mineral crystals, what happens is the refractive index of this mineral content is similar to that of adjacent surrounding dentin. And when this change encompasses within dentinal tubules pertaining to a specific region, there is appearance of a characteristic glassy translucent like appearance. When there is a discretely dispersible dentinal tubule zone affected by this sort of changes, it leads to formation of a glassy translucent appearance. Okay, so this is known as sclerotic dentin. This is very important. Now, what is the significance of sclerotic dentin? It is usually found in the apical third of the root in elderly persons, and it is usually thought to be associated with a protective response to increase the vitality of the pulp and to prevent pulp exposure as much as possible. So, to prevent pulpal exposure, to increase the vitality of the pulp is one of the main functions of this sclerotic dentin. Now, as we continue with this sclerotic dentin, we will now skip to another important thing, that is the secondary dentin and reparative dentin. Now, what is secondary dentin and what is reparative dentin? Secondary dentin is that type of dentin which is formed after completion of the root and it surrounds the pulp. So, the type of dentin which is formed after completion of the tooth root and surrounds the pulp is known as secondary dentin. It contains fewer amount of dentinal tubules in comparison to that of the primary dentin. It contains fewer amount of dentinal tubules or number of dentinal tubules than that of the primary dentin. Another important feature of this secondary dentin is that the zone where the dentinal tubules of the primary and secondary dentin meet, there is a specific bend or kink. There is a specific bend or kink in the region where the dentinal tubules of primary and secondary dentin meet. Also, the secondary dentin tends to form at a faster rate as in comparison to that of the primary dentin. So, secondary dentin is the dentin which is formed after root completion and surrounds the pulp. It is formed at a faster rate than that of the primary dentin. It contains fewer number of dentinal tubules than that of the primary dentin, and there is a kink or bend in the region where the dentinal tubules of primary and secondary dentin meet with each other. Now we will proceed to reparative dentin. What is reparative dentin? It is a type of dentin which is formed in response to various external stimuli such as mechanical, thermal, chemical, bacterial or electrical stimuli, or it can be certain regressive alterations of tooth like your attrition, abrasion or erosion of tooth, or it can be a microbial process like dental caries, or it can be iatrogenic such as faulty cavity preparation. Now, one thing is to be ascertained that due to this sort of external stimuli, what basically happens is it leads to changes involving specific cells within the pulp, especially the odontoblastic cells. The quality and quantity of the dentin, the reparative dentin which is formed in response to this, depends upon the number of cells involved, that is principally the odontoblastic cells, and also the duration and frequency of the external stimuli, that is electrical, thermal, chemical, mechanical or dental caries or the regressive alteration which might be the causative factor behind this. In this type of dentin formation, that is the reparative dentin, atypical dentinal tubules are usually formed. In this type of dentin formation, that is reparative dentin, atypical dentinal tubules are usually formed. Now, what is the radiographic feature of these types of dentin formation, that is secondary dentin or reparative dentin? Now, in case of this secondary dentin formation or reparative dentin formation, we get a specific picture, especially in terms of secondary dentin. When we see a radiograph, particularly an intraoral periapical radiograph, we usually see that there is a dense calcific mass or radiopaque mass in the region of the pulpal horns or proximal aspect of a tooth which has proximal dental caries. So there is a radiopaque or calcific mass near the region of the pulpal chamber or the pulpal horns or proximal parts of a tooth which has dental caries in the proximal part of a tooth. Now, these are usually observed as a radiopaque mass until and unless they are obscured by other kind of structures. This is the radiographic speciality of this type of secondary dentin. Now, what will be your histological pictures of these sorts of dentin? Histologically, we will see that when a decalcified section is observed under light microscope, a prominently staining zone between the primary and secondary dentin will be clearly visualized or evident, which will be termed as the resting lines. When a decalcified section is visualized under the light microscope, a prominently stained section will be very much observed, evident or visualized, which is known as the resting lines. Also, another very important or significant histologic feature to note is the osteodentin. Now, how is this osteodentin formed? I have previously told you that the secondary dentin is formed at a faster or rapid rate as in comparison to that of the primary dentin. Now, this dentin is formed by the odontoblasts. Now, as the odontoblasts form the dentin matrix, the odontoblast cells themselves get embedded within the formed matrix, and as this odontoblast cells gets embedded within the formed dentin matrix, the appearance is sort of kinda like bone or osteoid like structures, and this is known as osteodentin. I repeat again, the secondary dentin is formed at a faster rate than that of the primary dentin, and it is predominantly formed by the odontoblast. Odontoblast form the dentin matrix, and as the dentin matrix is gradually formed, the odontoblast cells themselves get entrapped within the formed matrix, and it sort of gets an appearance of bone-like substance or osteoid-like substance. This histologically is known as your osteodentin. So the resting lines and osteodentin, these are the two prominent histological features, as I have discussed the secondary dentin and the reparative dentin. Now I am going to talk regarding the regressive changes of pulp. As I've previously discussed, regressive changes like attrition, abrasion, erosion, etc., or dead tracts, or sclerotic dentin, or even reparative dentin, this one is also very much significant. Now, how does the regressive changes within the pulp take place? The regressive changes of pulp usually takes place in aged or elderly persons, similar to that of your sclerotic dentin. With increase of age, there is increased amount of regressive changes of pulp, and it affects the cellular contents as well as the fibrous contents. How does it affect the cellular contents? There is decrease in the number of and size of the cellular contents, particularly the odontoblasts. There is decrease in the number and size of the cellular contents, particularly the odontoblast. In terms of fibrous contents, there is increased amount of collagen fibers, and there is increased amount of fibrosis, and there is a decrease in the amount of odontoblast cells. These are the two predominant features. Now, an important aspects of formation of this regressive changes of pulp is your formation of a structure called pulp stones. Pulp stones. Now, pulp stones can be of three types based on its origin or structure, and also based on its location. First, we will discuss regarding the three different types of pulp stones or denticles based on their origin or structure. The first type of pulp stone is known as true denticles. True denticles. Now, what are true denticles? They contain dentinal tubules, and they are formed close to the apical foramens. So, what are true denticles? They contain dentinal tubules, and they are found close to the apical foramen of the tooth. How they are formed? They are formed due to the inclusion of Hartwig's epithelial root sheath, which are remnants of dental lamina formed within the periodontal ligament, their encroachment within the pulp. So they are formed by the inclusion and encroachment of the Hartwig epithelial root sheath within the pulp tissue, as a result of which the odontoblasts differentiate and forms masses of dentin. So this is your true denticle. Now we are coming to false denticles. What are false denticles? They do not contain any dentinal tubules, as opposed to the true denticles, which contain dentinal tubules. Now, these false denticles, how they are formed? At first, there is a nidus of necrotic cellular mass or tissue debris. At first, there is a nidus of necrotic cellular mass or tissue debris, surrounding which there is formation of concentric calcific layers of masses of tissue. Surrounding this nidus of your necrotic cellular or tissue debris, there is formation of concentric calcified layer of cellular mass, leading to the formation of false denticles. Sometimes a thrombotic mass formed from blood can also serve as the nidus of formation of false denticles. So we have covered true denticles and false denticles. Another type of denticle or pulp stone, according to its origin or structure, is the diffuse calcification. These are diffuse, discretely dispersible structures within the pulp tissue which are formed surrounding collagen fibers or blood vessels. So, what are diffuse calcifications? These are discretely dispersible diffuse structure or calcifications within the pulp tissue which are formed surrounding the collagen fibers or the blood vessels. So the three types of pulp stones or denticles which are formed as a result of regressive atrophy or alterations of pulp are true denticle, false denticle, and diffuse calcification. Now, according to their location, there are also three different types of denticles. These are free denticles, meaning the calcified structure is entirely surrounded by the pulp tissue. This is the free denticle. The calcified structure is entirely surrounded by the pulp tissue. Next is your attached denticle. The calcified structure is partly attached to the dentinal wall. Next is your attached denticle, meaning the calcified structure or denticle is partly attached to the dentinal wall. And third is your embedded denticle, when the calcified structure is totally embedded within the dentinal wall. So there is three types of denticle based on your location, that is free denticle, attached denticle, and embedded denticle. And what are denticle or pulp stones? These are calcified nodular structure which are found within the coronal or radicular portion of the pulp tissue or pulp organ. The pulp stones or denticles, these are nodular calcific masses which are found within the coronal or radicular portion of the pulp chamber or pulp organs. Okay, now what is the clinical significance of these pulp stones or denticles? Now, with increase in age, with inflammatory or external stimuli, certain regressive changes like calcifications or pulp stones can formed. So we have to isolate that stimuli and prevent it as early as possible, thereby preventing excessive calcification within the pulp so that the pulp chamber doesn't get shrunk to an excessive level and doesn't cause pathological problems. Another very significant point to note is that is your if there are excessive amount of pulp stones or denticles within the pulp chamber or pulp organ during root canal treatment, it is very difficult to negotiate the pulp canals. So these things are to be taken into consideration. This much for today. Thank you for your patience.